Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something pretty intense. We've got these lyrics from the Lexnour track, You Broke My Heart. And we're not looking at it like music critics, more like, well, we're treating it as a kind of psychological map, a roadmap of a relationship breakdown, defined by betrayal, broken trust, and that really painful search for some kind of balance afterwards. So the mission for you listening is to get into the skin of this, analyze the emotional story here. We want to pinpoint the stages of betrayal, the mental conflicts, and that tough road to healing that these lyrics lay out. Basically trying to pull out some universal truths about heartbreak from this really personal account. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and as we unpack it, the first thing that jumps out, I think, is how raw it is from line one. It doesn't build up. It's like, boom, here's the trauma. It feels like a chronological, really visceral telling of immediate damage. The core message is right there. Trust is just shattered. And psychologically speaking, that destruction of trust, that often hurts way more than just the relationship ending. We can kind of follow this emotional journey right from that initial shock, that stun, then into this phase of like self-doubt and looping thoughts. And then finally, it lands in this place of pretty deep pessimism about what comes next.
Right, that initial shock, it hits hard in the text, doesn't it? It uses really forceful, almost physical language. It's not gentle. You get that repeated line, you broke my heart, which, okay, that's familiar. But then straight after, backstab me in the back. That specific image.
Exactly. And that phrasing backstab, it's crucial. It immediately frames the hurt as deliberate, calculated. It wasn't just bad luck. It was an intimate kind of violence, you know? A backstab suggests they were close, trusted, and there was zero warning. It sets this tone of intentional harm right from the start.
Okay, so that's the sort of external hint, the betrayal itself. But what about the structure of the deception? The lyrics really highlight a specific promise, right? The thing they were holding on to told me that you never leave.
And that's the absolute core of betrayal, isn't it? That huge gap between what was promised, the expectation, and the reality. That promise of forever, or at least stability, just gets smashed. And the result, then you left me in the dark. That metaphor is so powerful, going from promised light and certainty to just darkness, abandonment. It's about losing your bearings completely. You're not just sad, you're suddenly like lost. No map.
It makes me wonder, though, when we look at it this way, are we just taking the speaker's side automatically? I mean, couldn't the other person argue they meant the promise at the time it was made?
That's a fair point, a really important one. But what the lyrics give us is the speaker's subjective reality. And for them, that feeling of being lied to is absolute, total, which then poisons the whole past, leading to this profound regret. It's crystallized in that line, everything you sold me wasn't never true.
Wow. So it's not just grieving the end of the relationship. It's like the entire shared history gets retroactively canceled out, invalidated. Every good memory is now potentially seen through this lens of, was it even real? So the past becomes another weapon, right? Not just the present pain, which kind of pivots us from the external act to the internal mess it creates. How does that initial deception spin up into so much mental confusion?
Yeah, that's a great transition because if the first part was the impact, the second part is like the fallout zone, the shrapnel hitting the inside. The speaker knows on some level intellectually this is bad for them. They even say, it feels like I'm better off.
Yeah.
But their emotions, their thoughts, they're just not in sync. They're pulling in opposite directions. This is that classic emotional loop. You could call it an involuntary memory trap almost.
Right? They're just stuck ruminating, constantly going over it, sad thinking about us, reminiscing by the times we had. They're trapped in the past. You see it so clearly. Now I can't get you out my head. Can't forget the things we did. It's like trying to drive forward, but you're chained to a point way back down the road.
And that creates this perfect storm of cognitive dissonance. It's almost textbook. The person who caused all this pain is suddenly labeled a regret. Never, ever thought you'd turn into a regret. And yet, in the very next breath, they're asking, tell me why you've been on my mind, even though you hurt me for the last time. That question is the internal war.
Yeah, the brain just hates that contradiction, doesn't it? Fact A, this person hurt me, they're bad news. Fact B, I'm still completely hooked emotionally. And the mind's desperately trying to bridge that gap, make it make sense somehow.
Exactly. Trying to force logic onto something that feels completely illogical. They're fighting their own attachment system. And what makes it even worse, I think, is this deep sense of unfairness, especially about how much they put in versus what they got out.
You see that defensiveness coming through. The speaker makes a point of saying how much they tried. I did everything I can. It's like they need to state for the record, I held up my end of the bargain.
Which then gets completely blown up by how simply the partner apparently left. The lyrics suggest it wasn't some big dramatic reason, just you just left me for that, whatever that is. And that part feels so relatable, so devastating. All that effort, their everything just dismissed, casually discarded. Feels like a massive insult to their commitment, their entire investment.
Oof. Yeah, that feeling. Going from thinking you're central to someone's world to realizing maybe you were just temporary, easily replaced, it really underlines how the speaker saw the relationship. My everything. It was fundamental.
And that's the shock, right? I can't believe I thought you'd be my everything. The realization that the commitment was totally one-sided, that the whole thing fell apart simply because for the other person, this wasn't part of the plan. It creates this huge disconnect. The speaker ends up concluding the partner don't think you understand, which isn't just saying they lack empathy. It's realizing they were fundamentally on different pages the whole time, playing different games.
So if the issue is this huge imbalance, this dismissal of effort, the next step you'd think is finding answers, trying to rebalance things mentally. But moving into the final part of the text, the thing that seems to be driving the ongoing pain is just silence, the lack of explanation.
That void, yeah. That lack of a finished story, narrative completion, that's the killer. It jams the healing process. The speaker says it point blank. No explanation. And not having a reason isn't just frustrating. It's genuinely torturous for the mind. It forces you into this loop you can't solve.
And you see the result. My mind is racing because they're stuck searching for the reason why you left me here. It's often said, right? Betrayal without a why can be way harder to process than betrayal with a painful why. At least a painful reason gives you something concrete to grapple with. Silence just makes you invent possibilities, doubt yourself, maybe even doubt your sanity.
And that absence of closure clearly takes a lasting toll on the speaker's identity. The trauma changes them. That line, look what you did to me, I'll never be the same. It shows this isn't just about a breakup. It's about a fundamental shift in their sense of self, their security. They've internalized the damage. It's permanent, or at least feels that way.
And they know, logically, healing takes time. But you feel the impatience Raleigh, they're running out of patience, acknowledging it's going to take some time for me to finally heal. Bunch. But the subtext here is that the partner made it as hard as possible by denying that closure. The speaker says, you made this so damn hard.
Yes, that line, you made this so damn hard. It's not just about healing being difficult in general. It's pointing a finger. It implies a kind of deliberate cruelty in the exit, maybe tying back to that backstab feeling from the start. And ultimately, the damage feels so total, it bleeds into the future. It creates this deep pessimism.
You see it starkly in the conclusion. It feels like I won't fall in love again.
That's a classic defense mechanism kicking in, isn't it? Born directly from the trauma. If putting your whole self out there leads to this, why would you ever risk it again?
Precisely. The experience just demolishes the idea of reliable commitment. That ideal they thought they shared so much for holding on and never letting go until the end. It's just exposed as, well, maybe naive, a fantasy. So the text doesn't really end with resolution. It ends with the speaker caught. Caught between knowing they need to heal and this really ingrained protective pessimism about trust, about promises, about the future. So what does this all mean? When we really treat these lyrics like an emotional document, step by step, we see this clear arc, don't we? Starts with that immediate, almost calculated trauma, moves to that really disorienting phase of internal conflict, self-doubt, that mental loop, and then lands on this long, hard road to healing, made way harder because there's no explanation to grasp onto.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think the source material really hammers home why closure, or at least some kind of narrative, is so vital for recovery. That complete lack of explanation, no explanation, left me here. It's the massive roadblock. It stops the psychological story from finding an ending, right? So the betrayal becomes this constant unsolved puzzle playing over and over in their head. The act itself might be over, but the mental search for why just goes on and on.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to chew on. The speaker keeps mentioning being left for something, but it's so vague. You just left me for that. Given that racing mind, that desperate search for a reason, what does the ambiguity of that actually do to the speaker? It's never defined, never made concrete. Does that mystery, the need to constantly try and fill in that blank, actually make their hurt worse than if they knew a specific, even if painful, truth? Does the vagueness of that just keep them locked in that loop indefinitely? Something to think about, definitely. The complexities of trust, betrayal, and finding a way forward. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.